It is possible to avoid overwhelm and trying too hard to get the important things done and make time for healing. And in this training, I'm going to share some strategies for doing that. Someone in my group said the following: they're recovering, their energy's getting better, and they said, any tips on how to decide which things to do in a day? There never seems to be enough time to do the things I feel I need to do to progress in my recovery, and the things I would like to do, and various pesky to-dos like cooking, shopping, bureaucracy. I want my day to feel relaxed and not like I'm a robot, going from one scheduled task to the next all day long. Even fun things can feel like just another to-do if I pack my day with too many tasks. So I'm going to share some strategies for addressing some of the issues that this person has shared. So do feel free to just let me know where you are in the world. Pop that in the chat. So the first thing I want to do is talk about why it's really important to get our approach and making time for healing right. The first thing is that if we don't get it right, we're going to experience frustrations. We are going to be feeling that we're not getting things done. We don't feel like we're prioritizing our healing and doing the things that we think will support our healing, and we don't feel like we make progress. But there's a number of mistakes people make when they do that. The first is trying too hard, okay? Trying to do too much, and this can hinder healing and cause burnout. You know, some people burned out because they were living life too much in the fast lane. Second thing, getting stressed about healing, having this fear, I must do all this stuff to get well, results in stress. And that actually slows down healing. The next mistake people make is thinking that you're failing when actually you are on track. You just need to do some fine tuning, okay? And the other mistake is thinking that healing only happens when you're doing healing activities. So I'll explain that in a little bit. Mari says hi from England. So nice to see Mari. So there's some opportunities here. When we get our approach right, this supports healing. This is going to result in more energy benefits, which is going to mean that you can do more and you're going to be feeling good because you're doing more, you're feeling better. Okay, so let's look at how to do that. So I'm going to go to my iPad and I'm going to share 4 strategies for what we need to do. Okay, and the first thing, the big idea is that great state management, okay, managing our state of mind and our physiology is going to result in great time management and task management. And this is going to support healing. So that's the first idea. Second thing we need to think about is what operating system are we running on? Okay, just like a computer has an operating system, I believe we have an operating system. And the operating system in very simple terms is that we're either operating from fear, and that shows up in all sorts of ways, okay? Or we're operating from trust. And if we're operating from trust, that is going to have a massive influence on our physiology and our healing. Louise says hi from Canada. Nice to see you, Louise. So, let's talk a bit about that. We need to shift from fear. For instance, if you feel like you've failed because you haven't got it all done, then you're going to feel disappointed and maybe frustrated, and of course that's not going to support healing. So it's important that we kind of identify the emotions that are driving the beliefs, the thoughts, the feelings and the behaviours, okay? Because if we're operating from fear, then this is going to drive certain patterns. For example, being perfectionist, overachiever, and often we develop these kind of habits and patterns from a young age because we wanted to feel loved, we wanted to feel safe, we wanted approval, and so that's why sometimes people develop those kind of behaviours. Perfectionism, overachiever, people pleaser, helper. Okay, when we're operating from trust, then we can make the shift. You know, when we're in a place of trust, then we have that sense, that deep sense on a cellular level, that it's all happening perfectly. And we have the opportunity to shift from perfectionist and overachiever to, what would you say is the opposite? What's the opposite to being a perfectionist? What's the opposite to being an overachiever? Pop your thoughts in the chat. Feel free, there's no wrong answers. Just feel free to say what you think. The opposite to perfectionism, overachieving, one aspect of that is that we're more pragmatic. Okay, that we're more grounded, that we accept our human limitations. Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. So third thing is we need to work with those emotions so that we actually transcend those unhelpful patterns. I used that word yesterday in the group coaching, the word transcend. Someone really liked it. I thought, yeah, it's a good word. So we need to transcend those kind of behaviours that keep us stuck and limited. All right, so we'll talk a bit more about that. And the fourth thing is we need to really look at our mindset and have a mindset that supports healing. I'd like you to consider you are in charge of your experience of time. Okay, I made a short video about this and I said that there's always more to do than there is time, and the challenge is to be okay with that. If you're not okay with that, there's some deeper work to do. Okay, and when this person says I've got these various pesky to-dos like shopping, cooking, bureaucracy, I wonder, and they can let me know either privately or on this video, whether there's some frustration and resistance, okay, to the fact that the reality is that these are things that need to happen. And we'll talk about how to make some mindset shifts around those to-dos. And even the word, those pesky to-dos, is interesting, okay? There's that sense of, these are irritations, okay? Consider that when we resist what is the reality that we have to do these things, then we lose, but only 100% of the time, according to Byron Katie. So Andrea says, yes, there is some resistance to the reality of those things. Smiley face, perfect. Okay. So yeah, Byron Katie says, when we resist, we lose, but only 100% of the time. Okay. So what is the opposite to resistance? Okay, again, pop your answer into the chat. Loving the high level of interaction. So I know there's a few people watching live. So what are your thoughts? Don't be shy. It's it's okay if your answer is different to mine. I'm always interested in other people's thoughts. Bang on. Andrea's bang on. She says acceptance. The opposite is acceptance and surrender. Okay. Because when we are in that place of acceptance and surrender, our body gets into a healing state. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about trying too hard. Yeah, Mari says acceptance as well. So I believe that trying too hard is a fear-driven strategy. And one of the problems with trying too hard is that we can actually be ignoring some of our needs. Okay, that's a bit of a slightly wonky line, but maybe I shouldn't be so perfectionist. So at one end of the scale, all right, we can be kind of a bit rigid and You know, an example of this is that a while back, before Christmas, I had a bit of a sore throat. And so I thought, okay, I just need to get early nights and eat well and all the rest of it. And I was just finishing a year-long coaching course that I was doing. So I was in the evening when I was having my dinner, I was just watching some of the videos and stuff. And then on a certain day, it's almost like I went to the other, well, maybe not the other extreme, which is complete chaos, but I reacted to the rigidity that I was kind of behaving a bit like a monk. And I stayed up late watching a film. And then I did feel a bit worse the next day. My throat was a bit worse. And actually, what I realised is what I needed is to kind of find that middle ground, okay, between being too rigid and being in complete chaos. There's a middle ground where we're having some structure, we're getting the early night stuff, but we're still having, you know, I know for me, I'm a bit of a hedonist, I need to have some fun in my life. And watching the film Run Fat Boy Run, which was a funny film, you know, it was what I needed, but maybe I could have done that in a way. I could have started watching it earlier and I still could have had an early night, but I could have had a bit more fun and injected a bit more fun. And that's one of my old patterns, to get a bit too strict with myself and be a bit monk-like. And then I react to it. There's a Phil Stutz, who's a psychiatrist, I think, talks about the shadow. And it's the part of us that we try and suppress. Maybe it's the part of us we don't like. We don't like this part of us that wants to eat cake and chocolate and biscuits or whatever. But that part of us wants some time out, wants a bit of fun, wants a bit of pleasure. And if we ignore it, then Phil Stutz says, then there's another part that will take over, which is called Part X. And Part X does not care about going to bed early and eating the right food. That part of it it's like our ego. It just wants what it wants, okay? And it will sabotage you if you don't take care of the shadow. The Part X will take over, and, you know, you'll adopt kind of behaviors that are going more this way, okay? And I've certainly had times when I was going too much this way, and it resulted in me going all the way to the other end of the spectrum. Let me know in the chat if that, so Andrea's saying that is so familiar. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Let me know in the chat. Can you relate to this concept that I'm talking about? Okay, I know there's a few lurkers here watching, so don't be shy. Be really interested in your thoughts. But do you relate to that? And the antidote, as I say, is that we find the middle ground, okay? We need to find balance, okay, in all things. So let's talk about, Mari's giving me the thumbs up. Let's talk about how we do that, okay? So when I train people in my building resilience, you know, these are the kind of things that we address. There are two elements that I'll talk about here, but I go into much more detail on the training. So how do we do that? How do we approach making time for healing in a way that's balanced, getting those other things done?